tight ends in the formation. Play fake, Bohannon. Here's the deep ball. They want to put some touch on it. Thornton's out there. Money. Touchdown, Baylor. Bang.
Saturday afternoon, Baylor and Iowa State at McLean Stadium. Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, and David Smoak. Hayden Bumpus runs the mothership. Sorry about the delay again. All right, so this is a barometer game. We've kind of, well, you couldn't hear us. Wisconsin and Notre Dame 10-3 late in the second quarter. It has been a turf war. Texas is destroying Texas Tech by 28 at halftime. They've done everything they've wanted and more. And then also SMU, TCU, 21 apiece. That game at halftime, and SMU left points on the field because they went for it on 4th and goal, did not score, intercepted by TCU, and they go to halftime tied at 21 apiece. So we're here in the studio. We'll take you up until 2 o'clock, we hope. And again, then Iowa State, Baylor at 2:30 in a game that we'll hear quite a bit. We'll know a lot more about Baylor after this afternoon against the Cyclones. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, David Smoak. Let's go back to what we started with. We've mentioned Texas Tech. We've mentioned Baylor. We've mentioned Notre Dame, Wisconsin. What are we going to start with now?
I mean, no, we really didn't. I mean, were we even on? I have no idea. Notre Dame 10-3 on Wisconsin. I can't say that that's a surprising score at this point. I mean, 12 versus 18. You expect it to be a close game, and so yeah, it's a close game right now, 10-3 there at halftime. So that'll be a fun one to see in the second half. You know, Wisconsin got up with the early field goal, and Notre Dame had the big second quarter. You know, with the 10 points to take the lead. So good one there, brewing between the Badgers and the Irish, and then yeah, Texas and Texas Tech. I mean, my gosh, I don't know that Matt Wells is going to make it to the end of this game. You know, I'm joking obviously, but Tyler Shuck's out of the game with an injury. So they've already had to switch quarterbacks. They've given up a 40-plus spot in the first quarter. They've given up a touchdown on every single drive to Texas. Bijan Robinson's running crazy. Casey Thompson's thrown like 2 incompletions. They are just kicking their backsides, and an ugly performance for the Red Raiders. A tremendous performance for Texas and Austin in front of a big crowd. I mean, that's going to be huge for Sarkisian. But to be this ugly this early, even if Texas is a really good team, it's inexcusable if you're Matt Wells. It's inexcusable to be down the way that they are at halftime. No, this is the kind of game get you fired. This is the kind of game that you just run out the rest of the year. That doesn't mean they can't win 4 or 5, but this is in a humiliating first half. Shuck threw a touchdown interception on a pick. Texas Tech is doing whatever they want. And you know, and they earn it. That what happens, UT comes back, wins this game 61-20 or whatever. Here comes the hype train again. They are up and down, but they look good. They look like they are on a different level than Texas Tech. And of course, at home, where sometimes they'll blow a tire, they have embarrassed Texas Tech in the first half. Well, I said it just a couple of days ago, or maybe it was yesterday, we were doing Big 12 pick'ems. You know, everybody was quick to bag on Texas after that loss to Arkansas. And my thing that I said, and I'll go back to, is, well, what if Arkansas is pretty good? Like, what if Arkansas is a really good team and Texas got beat by a really good Arkansas team, and so they're not bad. They just lost to another good team, and now they're going to go play teams that aren't as good as Arkansas and beat up on them, and that's what they're doing to Texas Tech today. So I think just because they got that early loss, if anything, that might have, you know, righted any wrongs, and today they look great. So, yeah, big day for Sark, and we'll see how the second half goes, but they're fully in control, and they can probably name their score at this point.
Well, now if they can just run the ball with Bijan Robinson and anybody else, I don't see Tech getting back in this. They're not going to just run the ball. They're going to milk. They're going to do everything they can to give Casey Thompson more opportunities to throw it, and they might be able to get a couple of 2 or 3 deep in their depth chart. 42-24, 42-14 right now. Yeah. But they can do whatever they want.
Well, one thing for Tech, too, is, you know, not only did you have the bad pick six, not only is Shuck now, you know, out of the game for the rest of the game, according to Matt Wells at halftime, but they've, you know, not been able to run the balls effectively, which has been something they've been able to kind of do with Taj Brooks and company, and they are not running the ball very well today. They're not doing a whole lot very well today. So, yeah, Texas putting a whooping on them.
All right, there's a couple of other top 25 games. Georgia is crushing Vanderbilt 38-0 at halftime. They are doing whatever they need to do. Penn State 17-3 started the second half against Villanova. And again, we mentioned Notre Dame, Wisconsin, 20-0. Coastal Carolina is going to score a bunch. And they normally do as they play UMass today. That game is early on in the second quarter. All right, now let's talk Baylor and Iowa State. We're going to hear from Travis Hines. He covers Iowa State. Sam Bradshaw, who breaks down the analysis of Baylor and Iowa State, or Baylor against whoever they're going to play and how they attack them. We'll have them today as well up until 2 o'clock. Now, give me 3 key elements. Yes, there's turnovers, all of that. That always goes without saying. Give me, how does Baylor win this game? What must they do? Give me 3 things, and they don't have to be the obvious, but maybe are some that aren't. How do they win this game?
Well, they need to just keep pace. And again, I think that they're probably better equipped to play from behind than maybe Iowa State even would be in certain circumstances. But if you can trade blows, I think this needs to be one of those things where you trade blows and go to the scorecard at the end of the fight, so to speak, because you have very, very similar styles. Very similar styles of what people do. And I think you need to not make silly mistakes like on special teams, penalties, because Iowa State's a veteran team. They will burn you for that. And just do what you do on defense.
I think that Gary Bohannon has to have a nice game throwing the football. He can't throw picks. He can't, make mistakes when they do throw the football. I guess you could lump that into the, turnovers thing. But, there's always 2 obvious. There's always 2 obvious. Turnovers, penalties, okay? So those are automatic. But as part of the turnovers, Gary Bohannon has to play his best game as a Baylor Bear so far, in my opinion, throwing the football. They have to be able to run the football. And Iowa State doesn't allow many teams to do that. But they're going to have to find a way to do it because as much as Gary needs to look good throwing, he's not going to be able to just win this game with his arm. They have to be able to run the football a little bit. So Gary and protecting and looking good with the football, running the football, and then I just think you play your average sound defensive game. And I know that's kind of covering all bases, but that's the key. Solid defense, run game, good passing. That's kind of saying everything, but that's how they have to win this game.
I think you're right on Bohannon, who has looked fantastic, and he's given them some things that we haven't seen, throwing the ball at different angles, different parts, deep, on occasion. Some of them, the long throw to Tyquan Thornton. They've had the short catch and run from R.J. Sneed, among others. Paul, I don't know if he has to throw the ball. If they get behind, he'll throw the ball a lot, but it sure would be nice against what Iowa State does defensively. Of course, it would be nice if Iowa State was able to do this, in their opinion, against Baylor's defense. If you can somehow early on have something that forces your secondary on the backside, your safeties to have to worry about what the other guy can do. Well, we know Purdy can give it up, but he also can make throws. We now need, and we will find out today about Bohannon under pressure.
Well, and look, if he can make the safeties back up the line, that's going to make that zone offense, wide zone offense, a lot more open for Baylor. So, yeah, hitting some stuff early in the passing game would be key. If they've got good, that Mike Rose guy is a monster. The defensive end whose name escapes me right now,
Xavier Hutchinson
is a monster. If they can counteract that by the run game, by, getting some passes out, even if it's not deep passes, if it's just, short to intermediate things that gain yardage and backing the secondary off, that'd be huge.
Yeah. And when I'm talking about throwing the football, I'm not talking about he needs to throw for 300 yards. I'm saying he can't throw picks. He can't throw, bad passes. And there's going to be some that he's going to have some incompletions, of course. But, okay, for example, last year, Brock Purdy had 3 interceptions in this game. Charlie Brewer had 2. If Gary Bohannon has 2 or 3, they're probably not winning this game.
You're right.
So that's what I'm more getting at, more than he needs to, he does need to connect deep, or at least, tease the Iowa State defense a little bit to open things up, but mostly he just got to protect the football.
Hutchinson's the wide receiver, the big, tall wide receiver for Iowa State. But if you look at their depth chart, Abba Zariki is a 3-year starter. His backup is a 3-year letterman. Let's see, Zach Peterson, 3-year starter. Hummel, 3-year starter. Vance, 3-year starter. Rose, 3-year. These are guys with meat on their bones. Greg Ellsworth, Anthony. Eisworth. They have guys, and some of them, a lot of them have been either All-American type candidates or made it a Big 12. They have amazing experience. Baylor has players on their defense that have been around. They were a part of that great game against Iowa State at McLean Stadium when they played a couple of years ago, and the field goal won it at the buzzer that helped launch them deeper into what they were doing in the Big 12 to play Oklahoma for the Big 12 championship.
The thing about this year in college football, though, is you're not going to face many teams who don't have tons of experience coming back. I mean, everybody should have some level of experience coming back. Iowa State just happens to have more than most, and there's just also so happens to be a bunch of guys who played for a Big 12 title last year. So they have a lot of successful returning experience. And I think to your point, Baylor does too. You know, some teams might have experience coming back, but it might be from teams that have barely made bowl games or what have you. It's a weird roster that Baylor's had, you know, last all this way. But the Tyquan Thorntons, the R.J. Sneeds, all those guys, Treston Ebner, Gary Bohannon, they've been 1-11. They've been 7-6. They've won 10-plus games. They played for a Big 12 title. They've lost, 7 games last year. I mean, they've been through everything. So they're about as experienced on the roller coaster of emotions as anybody, whereas Iowa State's is a little more experienced as far as success goes.
All right, so Keith Posa, number 1, protect the ball. Number 2, protect the ball. Number 3, we get it, protect the ball. Number 4, take advantage of the eventual mistake by Purdy, and he's known to do that. Speaking of which, Duggan was sacked and fumbled inside the TCU 5. SMU recovered and scored early, almost like a making up for what they didn't do. You'd like to see if you were SMU'd up by 3 and now 10, but the ponies are up by 28-21 early in the third quarter. One thing that Baylor cannot lose, and I agree with Scotty B on this one, you cannot lose in this game. I'll be surprised. Doesn't mean you can't. You cannot lose the turnover battle in this game. I think if you do, and especially if a couple of them are early, then I think you could get behind the curve, and then they can squeeze you, and next thing you know, you're down 10, 12, 14. Not that you can't come back, but that's something you cannot lose that. But most of the time, you can't lose the turnover battle anyway. How about special teams? It looks like Baylor has solved and really kind of tightened up their kicking game. They really have. Hankins has given them somebody who can kick it with a little bit of authority. Maybe you get a long field goal attempt if you need one. We know what Ebner does in the return game. The coverage game, I think, is, coverage teams have been pretty good. Fundamental, sound football in a game like this.
Yeah, they also haven't played a team with a good returner yet, so I'm curious to see that, what happens against Iowa State. And Iowa State's going to try some stuff. So.
Easy fix, kick it out of the back of the end zone.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
Which is a lot, you should be able to.
Which they've done a little bit.
Yeah,
that's
exactly right.
Don't kick it to where they can return it. I mean, that's pretty simple there, and they've got the leg to be able to kick it out of the back of the end zone as we saw their last outing, so that's what I would do. But, yeah, if it does end up in play, like, for example, today, you can't have the kickoff out of bounds right after you score a touchdown. That's the kind of stuff that will absolutely murder you today, and we've seen that happen of, hey, score, momentum, and then turn right around and, kick off out of bounds, and give them good field position to start. I mean, we can cover every mistake that's made in a college football game from turnovers to penalties or whatever, but, every one of those aspects is going to come into play in this game in my mind. Everything that could matter is going to matter in this game.
Yep, and when you look back at 2 years ago, Baylor wins on the field goal at the buzzer. You know what? You have to kick a field goal. Baylor led that game 20-0. I think that's what they would remember. They had a problem finishing games. They finished a lot of games. Hell, they were 11-3, but they got very fortunate against Tech in overtime. They fell behind in that game, came back. They had a 20-0 lead on Iowa State. They had a big lead on Oklahoma and couldn't hold on. But you have to win the various fundamentals. Hidden yardage, as Bill Parcells says, which is mostly a part of the return game or coverage game. Field goals, make them all. Punts, average 40, 45 per net. That's all of what you do and what could be. I mentioned Notre Dame, Wisconsin, a turf war because it's 10-3. This could be one of those today as well. Not 10-3, but a turf war with what you can do on offense and defense and special teams.
Well, I think if you're Baylor, you just hope that you're not Texas Tech, where clearly you hadn't played anybody, and Texas Tech had a tougher schedule than Baylor did. I mean, they at least played Houston, but they actually lined up against a real team today, and they're getting popped in the mouth, right? So, I am very curious to see Baylor early on, if there is anything to the fact that this is a huge step up in competition for them, whereas I think Iowa State's, they already played Iowa. So, if anything, Baylor's not better than Iowa. So, they've played a tougher team already, and I wonder how much that potentially comes into play today.
All right, 254-339-1122. We'll get to a call. on today, Baylor and Iowa State, or something that you've seen so far in college football up until right now? Most of the games have now started the second half.
Stephen from Virginia, you're on the BetUS caller line. Thanks for your call.
Hey, guys. I think 3 keys to the game for Baylor and Iowa State for me. The first one is play calling and execution. The offensive line has allowed the simplicity of the offense to work so far this season. I think the offensive line can really not even so much win the war in the trenches, but call it a draw and allow the Bears to run the ball. All of a sudden, the game becomes completely different because the defense is still as good as it's ever been. The second would be the penalties. Y'all brought this up already, but like the kick out of bounds or bringing or a punt return for a touchdown that's called for a holding that had nothing to do with it, or these kind of things. That's why some of these games have been closer. And the third is kind of interloped with that. And Smoak was just talking about this, but finishing a game. I think that the growth in Matt Rule's teams is that like year one, they didn't really get blown out by anybody except Oklahoma State, and you always felt like they were in it in the fourth quarter. And they were so young and so inexperienced, they had never been there before. But by year 2, they were 7-6 because they were still in all of their games, but, more often than not, they found a way to win. And then by year 3, they were in every single game down to the wire, and it all turned up roses because they had been there before. I think that the way Baylor wins this football game is they run the football effectively, they don't turn it over, they cause a few turnovers themselves, and we look up in the fourth quarter, and this is a 3-point game or less, and Gary is looking at these guys that he keeps having, meetings with every night to watch film, and he says, "Hey guys, we've got this. Let me go take us to the win," and they go take a game-winning drive late. So I'm really excited for this game. I think Baylor's going to win. I think I've told y'all I'm just about ready to explode, and I've been this way since they skunked Kansas 31-0 in the second half. So I'm ready to either be like losing my mind or to go into hiding. Either way. I'll catch y'all later.
Stephen, thank you for your call from Virginia. You make a lot of good points. If you can get this game, the longer the game goes and Baylor is there, obviously you gain confidence from that. Iowa State has been tested with Iowa and lost the test, but tested. And so, Texas Tech, as you said, Craig, they played Houston. They played a couple of they have just absolutely basically no-showed. And give Texas credit for also punching them and knocking them down and bloodying them early in that game.
Yeah, I mean, they did. And, Casey Thompson he's only had a couple drives in all his time now at Texas where they have not gone down to score points. I mean, you can say whatever you want about his game. Not that there's like a bunch of people saying negative things or anything, but like say whatever you want about Casey Thompson, your opinion on him. You can't say that he doesn't get you points because he does pretty much every single drive. It's proven now, like 20-plus drives and like 19 of them they've scored touchdowns on or whatever. So there's something about him that is highly effective. I think, for Baylor, I was kind of saying this earlier, we've seen them against Texas Southern and we've seen them against, teams that are not up to snuff, quite frankly, a Big 12 play. And so to face an Iowa State team like today, I'm looking forward to seeing what's real and what's not. But, count me as a little bit, worried of, okay, is this going to be a Texas Tech situation where you go into a game and you feel like, hey, our defense is pretty good, and all of a sudden you line up against Texas and you realize, our D-line's atrocious. We're screwed here. And so that's what I wonder about with Baylor today is there a hole that we're not seeing or a thing that we're not seeing just yet because it's been covered up that today Iowa State's able to unveil, or vice versa? Is there something about Iowa, maybe it's Brock Purdy's play, that Baylor exposes a little bit more? That's what I'm interested in because we talked about this being a weekend of storylines, and we're already seeing it with Tech and Texas. We can now create
separation.
There's definite separation now. We'll start moving Tech back towards the bottom. Let's elevate Texas a little bit, and we're going to be able to do that with these two teams as well.
By the way, Thompson just threw a pick in the end zone, so he made his first mistake in his lifetime.
Let me talk about him some more.
His phrases.
Casey Thompson,
he saved puppies from a fire.
He scores all the time, every time he touches the ball.
By the way, Texas, TCU is driving on SMU. There's been a couple of flags that negated a pretty good run by Duggan.
Zach Evans is good at football.
21 right now, and Zach Evans is absolutely phenomenal. He almost fell in their lap, basically. Committed initially to Georgia. We know the story there. with him. He is phenomenal. All right, when we come back, we're going to hear from, you want to go Bradshaw or Travis Hines?
Let's go Travis Hines.
Let's come back with Iowa State analyst Travis Hines on what the Cyclones and who the Cyclones are. Some of you on the chat room from Keith, TCU writes Evans down the field, and then they throw 2 passes. Yeah. 1 holding call. Now they have to settle for what might be a field goal. Common sense. Gary Bohannon needs to connect on a deep shot early. Common sense. I think that would help. And then also defense needs to get into the backfield and absolutely want to see some disruptive tackles for losses, pressure on Purdy, who can hurt you if you don't contain him. That's the one thing, will you guys not agree, that we have not really seen much of against teams you should be doing that to? That will be interesting, and it's time for Apu to live up to the hype.
Yeah, I would think that they should be closing in like 10 sacks right now over these first 3 games, and they're not. I mean, they've gotten a few, but they haven't got nearly as many as you would have expected given the opponents they've lined up against. Apu at this point, I don't want to call him a disappointment, but he kind of has been, and the fact that he's only played in a couple games, and like Dave Aranda's point is he's not always going to be the guy who's getting the sack or on the tackle sheet. I mean, a lot of his job is not, statistical. It's like eating up blocks. It's, opening up holes for Terrell Bernard to come flying in and sack the quarterback. But, he's got to have his best game that he's had in his college career, I think, today.
Sometimes his tackles are what others get because if he's doing his job, if he's creating problems and others are having to double team him to allow others to roam free.
But he's going to have to do that, and they're going to have to find a way to get pressure. And Bernard and Petrie, I'm sure, will come flying in on occasion on blitzes, but they got to find another way outside of those guys. And when they get back there, they've got to make the tackle because Iowa State will expose the hell out of that.
The problem, though, is you have Kohler. And he is your safety valve. I love tight ends in college football. I love tight ends at any level, and he can really hurt you because of what you have over the middle.
If you can't get pressure up front, you have no choice but to send Bernard and Petrie or some combination of others, and you're going to do that anyways in this defense. But, if that's the only way that you can get pressure, then that's the problem. They're going to have to find it from somewhere else as well.
All right, from Ryan on the text line just a minute ago, thanks. This is a fantastic game day spot, guys. I know Baylor isn't the 800-pound gorilla like Texas, but I would put you guys up against anyone. Man, I hope fans realize what we have. And that's from Ryan, who just texted us at 254-339-1122. Ryan, thank you. Let's take a break, come back. Travis Hines, he covers Iowa State. Sam Bradshaw breaks the game down for us as well from what he thinks Baylor and Iowa State try to do. And this is Sikkim 365 Radio.
The 2021 Ram brand just received first place in the prestigious J.D. Power's initial quality study. The Dodge brand finished second to Ram, and the 2021 Jeep Gladiator is first among all midsize trucks. Quality and Ram Power Days, only at Allen Samuels, 201 West Loop 340.
Come by, let's be friends.
It's football season. Sports bettors and BetUS.com has your NFL and college football live betting lines up for their 27th year. Why BetUS.com? Well, they're the 3-decade leader, and you can join now for a 125% bonus on promo code SICK'EM125 with cash, or a 200% bonus on crypto with SICK'EM200. The 3-decade leader with action on every sport across the world. We can pretty much guarantee that they've got your game at BetUS.com. Use promo code SICK'EM125 or SICK'EM200.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
With more than 160,000 alumni worldwide and counting, the Baylor family is growing. And through the university's expanded Baylor alumni program, the family is growing closer. With hundreds of local volunteers planning events in cities and towns around the country, you can gather with fellow Bears no matter where you are. So, get connected, get something started, get involved, and make plans to get together with Baylor alumni. Visit us at baylor.edu/alumni.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Hey, this is Bryce Petty, former starting quarterback and two-time Big 12 champion, and I know firsthand the importance of being in top shape both on and off the field. So listen up, men. If you're feeling beat down day in and day out and looking for that high-performance edge that separates the men from the boys, then look no further than the Petty Clinic Low T in Waco. Petty Clinic is a comprehensive men's healthcare clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Board-certified Dr. Kent Petty has a special interest in offering the highest quality medical care to men of all ages. Some of the services offered include screening and treatment for low testosterone or thyroid, infertility, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, while offering comprehensive wellness exams and complete men's health lab panels. High performance men, remember, it's not just a Petty thing. This is Bryce Petty, encouraging you to reach out and Google search Petty Clinic Low T or go to pettycliniclowt.com and get your complimentary lab screening today.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. Call us on the BetUS hotline, 254-339-1122.
Baylor this Saturday afternoon at McLean Stadium, Iowa State, kind of riding the ship after playing a very intense game, not just a rivalry, but two top-ranked teams in Iowa, or top 10 teams in Iowa and Iowa State. There has been a little bit of bad blood at times between Iowa State and Baylor, and they play this Saturday in Travis Hines' Des Moines Register, and joins us on Sikkim 365 Radio. Travis, doesn't it seem to you that this has got a little bit of something to it? This Iowa State-Baylor, like we thought, this is our opinion, that a couple of years ago in 19, there was a lot of anger, and I get it because of how that game ended, but that it was supposed to be Iowa State's year to kind of move up to the next notch like it was last year or even this year, and that Baylor got in the way. Do you sense kind of a negativity between these two?
Yeah, I mean, I think you go back, what would have been 2018, David Montgomery, Iowa State's star running back, thrown out of a game against Baylor at Jack Trice Stadium for fighting with Baylor. And then last year, the big talker, I think it got overblown, but you know how these things go with college football, that Iowa State wasn't allowed to have, or in 2019, wasn't allowed to have the tents on the sideline when it was 124 degrees. So, yeah, I do think there's some animosity there. Obviously, different coaching staffs at this point, but I do think that there is a little bit of juice to this matchup, and some of it is, I think as Baylor has maybe come down from the pack a little bit since the Briles years, that Iowa State and Baylor are kind of fighting for the same spot in the Big 12, and that's certainly going to even be more the case with Oklahoma and Texas leaving, that, they're kind of in that same real estate where if one advances, it's probably at the expense of the other. So I do think there is a little bit of juice to this thing.
What are we to believe about their offense? Is it the struggle bus that we saw in the first 2 weeks, or is it maybe a little bit of what we saw against obviously a lesser opponent in UNLV?
It's hard to say, because I do think when you're talking about, even at the FCS level, Northern Iowa always has a difficult, tough-nosed defense. Obviously, I think Iowa might have one of the stouter defenses in the country, and then you go to UNLV, which honestly just had no chance to stop Iowa State. I don't think they'd stop very many Big 12 offenses. So it's really difficult to say, but I think the default is you have a fourth-year quarterback in Brock Purdy, when you've got All-Americans at running back and tight end like Iowa State does, and then an all-league guy at wide receiver in Xavier Hutchinson. I tend to default to think that the offense will be fine. There's too much talent there for them not to figure it out, but certainly those first 2 weeks were concerning. So they might not be where they need to be, but I tend to lean on talent, and I don't think there's any question when you look at the track record of the players that Iowa State has on their roster that there's plenty of talent on that offense. It's just finding a way to make it work.
Did Brock Purdy's performance last week kind of quiet some of that chatter that had occurred as a result of the benching against Iowa?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't know that there was any serious discussion among observers or Iowa State fans about actually benching Brock Purdy going forward. But when that happens in the fourth quarter of a game that you're probably not winning, but it's not fully out of reach, that's going to send the chatter pretty high. But then he had kind of a vintage Brock Purdy game against UNLV. Super efficient, no mistakes other than, a fumble that was a little fluky. But I do think that has quieted whatever misgivings there were. And the bottom line is that when Brock Purdy plays his best, he's one of the better quarterbacks in the Big 12. He's not incredibly flashy, but he is incredibly productive. And when you have an Iowa State team with a running back like Breece Hall in the backfield and a defense that is frankly incredible on the other end of the ball, you just need a quarterback to be efficient and mistake-free. And then when Brock Purdy's at his best, that's what he does. And when he struggles, it's throwing 3 interceptions against Baylor last year. It's throwing 3 interceptions against Iowa a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, that first half last year, early in that game last year, that game was about the tilt. They were almost – Iowa State pretty much – golly, at halftime it looked like they were dead in the water, and then things changed. There was a long kick return, and then, obviously some things happened. What would it do, Travis? I mean, the season continues. You got a game next week or whenever the next game is. What would it do with all of the buildup they have, which is also expectations? That's the standard they want. If they don't push through this year and get to whatever that next level is supposed to be?
Hey, I think it'll be really hurtful because you look at the roster and obviously everything's in flux because of the eligibility questions, or will guys use that 5th and 6th year because of COVID last year. But I think if you're a betting man, you look at a lot of their stars are probably going to be moving on. This is as good as Iowa State has literally ever been positioned to have a successful season in 130 years of football. Are you going to bet that that's going to happen again in the next 3 to 5 years? Maybe. I think Iowa State's recruiting has been fantastic, but you're not going to have this collection of players at best for a few years. And then the other big looming question is, as was reported this summer, Matt Campbell got an offer of over $60 million from the NFL. At what point do you continue to turn that down if you're Matt Campbell? And if he's no longer able to turn down that insane amount of money, is there another coach that can replicate what he's done? Because, again, in 130 years of football at Iowa State, he's the only one who has done what he's done here in the last 6 seasons. So I do think there's some urgency to make the most of this season. Although, again, there is optimism because you look at the game last week, they had 13 first or second year players play in that game. I think they're really excited about their recruiting. It's just, again, when you've been waiting this long for this opportunity, it's really difficult if you come up short.
Travis, does it kind of maybe hurt the psyche of the Iowa State fans that they look across the state to their big in-state rival and their coach has been there? I mean, they've only had 2 coaches in like 78 years, it feels like, at Iowa with Hayden Fry and Kirk Ferentz. And, they've been this revolving door. I mean, do they wonder if there's some sort of magic elixir they could give Matt Campbell to make him completely content and ignore those riches?
Oh, man, I think we need to have like a multiple week-long show to really break down the relationship between Iowa and Iowa State fans in the decades, because it's incredibly complicated. There's jealousy on both sides, but certainly the Hawkeyes have dominated the discourse and the fandom in this state for decades, and that has certainly begun to change here in the last even 5 to 10 years. I think Paul Rhodes had a lot to do with that. While his tenure certainly fizzled at the end, he generated a lot of excitement that I think has helped build Iowa State to where it is now. But, I mean, again, like you said, Hayden Fry and Kirk Ferentz for the last literally 40-plus years have turned Iowa into one of the more consistent programs, outside the absolute blue chips. And I think that's hard for Iowa State fans who have kind of ridden the roller coaster here, for decades to watch unfold just 130 miles away. But, if anything gives Iowa State fans solace or, can give them some confidence that maybe something like that could happen here, it's that Kirk Ferentz, very similarly early in his tenure at Iowa State, at Iowa, had opportunities in the NFL that he ultimately turned down and has now turned Iowa into a program that, every 5 years they seem to have a special season. So if you're Iowa State and that's the opportunity or that's the blueprint that you see across the state, it's a pretty good one to replicate. And I do think there are a lot of similarities between Matt Campbell and Kirk Ferentz in terms of temperament, in terms of philosophy. We'll see in terms of career path.
Travis, what has been the feeling around Ames when it comes to all hell breaking loose following Big 12 Media Days with OU in Texas, and then subsequently, obviously a few days ago, a couple weeks ago, the official announcement of 4 new members to the Big 12 in the coming years. Obviously a lot of uncertainty over the last few weeks. I know a lot of Iowa State fans are talking about, can we go to the Big 10, or can we, what's kind of been the consensus on what's unfolded with the realignment in the Big 12?
I think the initial reaction was frustration from Iowa State, not because of the existential threat to the athletic department in the Big 12, but because they had a top 10 team for their first time in their history. And obviously realignment drove the discourse. Nobody was really talking about football there for 5 or 6 weeks as this unfolded. And I think that was frustrating for Iowa State fans who wanted to bask in this opportunity that they've had. And then I think it kind of got put on the back burner a little bit because there was so much uncertainty. I think there was maybe a little burst of optimism very momentarily about a potential landing spot in the Big Ten. However, low probability that probably was in all likelihood. But I think now with the 4 coming in, there's at least a little bit of stability. And I think Iowa State fans are confident in their leadership and Jamie Pollard, who has now been the AD here for 15 or 16 years. So I think there's a confidence level in how he'll navigate this for Iowa State and within the Big 12. But certainly, if you add those 4 programs in, and we'll see if they add more beyond that, you're still probably looking, in my opinion, at a pretty significant financial hit going forward. We'll see how it all unfolds. But, I think there is some consternation about, are you going to be able to support all of your non-revenue sports? Wrestling is a big deal in the state of Iowa and at Iowa State. Are you going to be able to pay your football coach $4+ million a year like they're paying Matt Campbell? So I think those are the things where once all this settles, that'll be the concern spaces for Iowa State fans and for Iowa State administration.
Yeah, Travis, when this happened, when the Texas-Oklahoma story broke at the end of July, right after the Big 12 Media Days where everyone seemed to be so happy, kissy, wah-wah, and all that, well, it wasn't the original. Wouldn't you think Ames or Manhattan? I know Lawrence, there was the immediate thought, well, we'll just go to the Big 10. No, you're not. Slow down. Or everywhere else, wasn't it like, what happens to us? Wouldn't it be now where everyone's a little bit more comfortable, even though they're watching, so to speak, the college football stock market?
Yeah, I think if the Big Ten were to knock on the door tomorrow, Iowa State would go as fast as they could to that landing spot. But I think with what we've seen, I think initially when all that happened, people had flashbacks to 2010, where, honestly, Iowa State might be getting left without a chair in that game of musical chairs, where you're looking at the Mountain West. I know was the one that everyone was worried about, or initially when we weren't sure exactly how things were going to play out. Do you drop down to an AAC level where you're looking at $8 or $9 million a year from your TV rights, as opposed to the 40 that the Big 12 is drawing in now? So I think those were the immediate fears, and once those got calmed a little bit, I think people are content with maybe not content, but understand that the Big 12 was dealt a pretty difficult hand, and they seem to be playing it as well as they can. Again, we'll see how it all shakes out at the end, but I think for the foreseeable future, the Big 12 feels relatively stable, and you're not looking at a potential financial catastrophe that you were looking at if everything dissolved and people are, looking for a spot to land, and you're looking at the Mountain West or the AAC, where you're completely remaking your athletic department and probably your whole image as a program.
So, Travis, looking back to this Saturday, Iowa State is who they've been. We know the style, the physicality. We know the big playmakers on both sides of the ball, from Mike Rose and McDonald on defense to obviously Purdy and Kolar and, Breece Hall on offense, so on and so forth. This is a different Baylor team, though, than Iowa State has faced here recently. They're playing with a lot of confidence, actually showing some spirit on offense. What is the Iowa State perspective from either the fans, the media, on what to expect from Baylor this weekend, or what to watch out for in regards to ISU?
Yeah, I think Iowa State fans and the coaching staff are certainly cognizant of the Baylor offense and their rushing attack. I think that's going to be the focus of their week. But I think really it'll come down to what is the matchup with the Iowa State offense in the Baylor defense, because obviously Baylor's schedule has not been a murderer's row, and Iowa State's offense has struggled against the one Power 5 defense that it's played. So I think, we'll see maybe, which one of these is for real. Is the Baylor defense as good as it's at? Is the Iowa State offense as bad as it's at? So I think that'll really be where the game is won and lost. And I think one other thing to maybe keep an eye on is Iowa State's special teams have been a little shaky at times, not only this season, but going back to last season, where that's not a proven commodity yet. And if this is a close game, like we've seen a lot in this rivalry or in this series the last few years, that's a place where Iowa State has more confidence in its special teams this year than in previous years, but it's still unproven. So that's something to keep an eye on.
Thank you very much, Travis. Great to have you. Appreciate your time. And we'll know it. We play the games. We see the games. We watch the games and cover the games. We get evidence. And that's all that matters as we see what happens on Saturday. Travis, great stuff. The Des Moines, Iowa Register. He also writes for a newspaper in Ames as well and covers Iowa State very, very well. Joined us on Sikkim 365 Radio. We will have J.J. Joe in the early...
Y'all listen up. Let me tell you something about group meals from Rudy's Barbecue. It's got all you need for all the folks you gotta feed, smoked meat, sides, and more. There's everything down to the tablecloth, just like the one that you see at the store. At a bridal shower, it's better than flowers. In a long-distance meeting, it'll pass the hours. It'll feed all the cousins at a family function. It's better than potluck at a church luncheon. Next time you need to feed 10 or more, call and order a Rudy's group meal.
Next in line.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio with socially distanced seating for your enjoyment. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs and veggie burgers too. State Fair tornado fries, nachos, and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton. You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
In the market for a quality metal building? Since 1943, Pioneer Steel & Pipe has helped Central Texas residential and commercial customers with metal building design, panel options, building components, and trim options. Pioneer Steel & Pipe's residential line is energy efficient, offers low maintenance, reduces insurance payments, is impact resistant, and carries up to a 45-year limited warranty. In addition, they can also help you find a metal building contractor for your project. Pioneer Steel & Pipe with locations in Waco and Bryan and at pioneeredboys.com.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, family-owned and operated must-visit pizza place in Waco. Fantastic pizza by the slice or get the whole pie to share. Great happy hour specials every single day, and it's not just pizza. Great wings. You have to try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries, pizza pillows, and more. Dine in for a great hangout or carry-out. Order online at shortyspizzashack.com or do yourself a favor and bring your crew to the restaurant at 12th and Bagby. Shorty's Pizza Shack. Tell them Paul sent you by.
This This is Sikkim 365 Radio. Text us at 254-339-1122. The Sikkim 365 Radio text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Sam Bradshaw on the in the premium section. You'll see him. He's just like, here's a story, and it's always about either what just happened and or what is about to happen with Baylor and Iowa State. Such an intriguing game, it appears, tomorrow at 2:30. Also this, Brazos Parking, where Sikkim 365 has a tailgate location along with hundreds of others. It is Customer Appreciation Day. Enjoy a free item on them. Ice cream, Cold Coors Light, Balcones Oktoberfest beer, whiskey sour cocktail. Paul, you're not allowed. Brazos Parking would like to thank Centex Satellite Heritage Creamery one-day bar, and that's tomorrow on the MLK location just across from McLean Stadium in Waco. We're now joined by S11 Sam Bradshaw. Are you dilated yet?
Of all the questions I thought you'd ask, that would not be one among them.
No, I was just making sure. Sam, of course, is on baby watch. We're excited about that for you and excited we get another week in. All right, Sam, this game is getting a lot of play. And one is that we cover Baylor, but also these two teams have put on some pretty interesting games of late. But Iowa State seems to still be a couple of years ahead because of the transition in the coaching staff. What are your thoughts about Baylor and Iowa State just overall at the start?
Well, Iowa State's come out not exactly sprinting like their preseason number 7 ranking would imply. They really kind of sputtered on offense. Their defense has been outstanding, but their offense really hadn't gotten in gear, whereas Baylor has looked mostly really good outside of a couple turnovers and drive-extending penalties. But at the end of the day, you're talking about a Texas State team that lost to Incarnate Word. You're talking about Kansas. And you're talking about Texas Southern, which might be the worst team they've played in 2 decades. So good on them for handling their business, but we really don't have a good barometer for this Baylor team. We're going to get it over the next 3-4 weeks between Iowa State, Oak State, West Virginia, and BYU. We're going to have a real good idea about who the team is. But, it's an interesting matchup because both teams over the last couple of years have made it to the Big 12 title game, but done so being consistently able to win close games in conference play. Going into those title games, both teams had been 4-1 in single-score games during conference play. So while Iowa State certainly got a lot of accolades off of making the title game last year, it's not that they were overwhelming. I mean, even Baylor's very struggling and COVID-impacted unit last year was a goal line series away from sending that game to overtime in Ames.
Sam, you mentioned that they've beaten all the people they're supposed to beat. Is there, when you watch the film, how much better is their technique, especially along the fronts? That way, granted, they can have the best technique in the world. If the other guy's better than you, he's better than you and beats you. But is their technique so much better that last year that you can see that they can be competitive and maybe even win this game against Iowa State?
Oh, without question, their technique is miles better. A lot of it is the simplification of the scheme. You're doing fewer things and you're doing them very well. But another thing is there were just times last fall. I mean, I keep pointing back to it because it's such a textbook example, but the West Virginia game, you had pass protections where nobody blocked the nose guard. You had, they run power and 2 guys on the front side are on block. You just can't have that. And this year they've done a good job of knowing their responsibilities, going out and executing. Now, how well their efficiency remains when they start facing some really strong defensive lines, we'll see how that goes. But as far as handling their own business and making the opponent actually beat them, they're miles away from where they were last year. And I absolutely think they have a chance to hang in there with this Iowa State team and potentially beat them. Iowa State really struggled against Northern Iowa and Iowa, at least offensively. And offensively, I really think that Iowa State's run game, their offensive line is pretty good, but I don't think they've got a bunch of NFL guys up there. I think you can limit them. And I really think in the run game, Iowa exposed this, but they really, really missed the 6'7", 270-pound tight end nobody could remember the name of, Dylan Sainer, the third guy in their trio. He's gone. He was the guy that did all the dirty work. And multiple times in that Iowa game, Iowa's linebackers or defensive line took one of their star tight ends and pushed him back, including on the play where they got the fumble return for the touchdown. The guy who punched the ball loose punched that tight end in the backfield first. You know, their line's solid, but I really think they're not blocking on the edge nearly as well. So Iowa and Northern Iowa sat with four-man rush, variations on conservative zone looks, handled them on first down, handled them on second down, and then they either went to cover one or cover two man on third down. And ISU couldn't break out of it. Their third down conversion rate was not good. They were punting far more than they wanted, and Iowa especially turned them over. And, you know, if Baylor can hold up against the run like that without giving up the ghost in the air, they absolutely have a chance to win this, because I was not impressed by what I saw against Northern Iowa and Iowa. And granted, those are two good defensive teams. But for ISU to reach their preseason expectations, they've got to pick it up.
Sam, when it comes to Gary Bohannon, this is clearly his biggest start to date, and he has looked good over these first few games, but again, the lack of competition. So what do you view as the most keys, the most important keys to Gary Bohannon translating what he's done so far to also doing it against stiffer competition? What do you think Iowa State's looking to do to try and prevent that from happening?
Well, with Iowa State, their defense, and this is where they're pretty innovative, athletically, their safeties, their linebackers, their corners, and even their D-line isn't necessarily any quicker than what you see, but because they run that 3-3-5, they can do an awful lot of disguise, and they are very physical. But they'll sit with three deep safeties. They could be in cover one. They could be in 4 or 5 different variations on cover three. They could be bringing a blitz. They could be dropping 8. They do everything out of a very similar pre-snap look. So it's going to be incumbent on Gary to just protect the ball. Use your legs to extend drives, similar to how Brewer's been able to do it against these guys the last couple of years. But really just protect the ball, take what they give you, do your best to get clues on what they're doing pre-snap, using motion, using formation. I have a feeling that'll be a big part of the game plan, to use formations and motion to really try and get these guys into some predictable looks. Because if you let them disguise and then surprise him at the snap all night, it's going to be really difficult on the kid. You've got to do everything you can to get them into some predictable looks. And if you can do that, you can scheme up some one-on-ones against that secondary. And I think Baylor's got the speed to run by these guys. Tyquan Thornton had a couple big plays against them in 2019, and a lot of those kids on the other side are still there.
Sam, who ends up with more yards rushing, Breece Hall or the combination of Abram Smith and Treston Ebner?
That's tough to tell. You know,
well, to Breece Hall's credit, you just named him, and it's 2 other guys he's going against. Yeah, but I know what you're saying.
But he's the lion's share of their carries. So, yeah. I mean, it's going to be a similar amount of carries, in my opinion. But I'd probably go with the 2 Baylor guys, simply because I don't think Iowa State's going to be as keyed in on them. But, you know, I just haven't been impressed with Iowa State's run game against the 2 deep teams they played to play defense. And then, you know, Baylor's so unproven. That's a tough one.
You know, the thing about Purdy, and he can be erratic, but he had the really bad start against Baylor last year, and then he just seemed like if he can make a throw, and I guess it's like a pitcher who can't throw a strike, and then all of a sudden he gets somebody to swing at a bad pitch or whatever, but he's streaky. Is that who he just is? And does Baylor have enough pressure on him tomorrow? Can they get enough pressure on him tomorrow? We've talked about with you before. Do you think they can do that? Because that's what they need to do. But he also can extend plays with his legs as well.
Yeah, they've got to do their best to when they get to him, they've got to get him down. The way they let Brady McBride extend plays for Texas State, they can't let that happen here. Purdy's too good at extending drives and extending plays. But I think they can get to him. I think some of the stuff that Iowa and Northern Iowa did to get to him, I think Baylor can replicate some of that. And I also think that Aranda and Roberts have been extremely vanilla defensively because they really haven't had to be anything else. So why would you give people film on some of your preferred pressure packages and things like that? So I think they'll be able to get some pressure on him, because Iowa State's passing game, they've had a lot of drops. They've had a lot of misfires. I really think that passing game has kind of slipped over the last couple of years because while Xavier Hutchinson is a very good receiver for them, I don't feel like they've had that one can't-miss matchup the way they had with Hakeem Butler, where you just had like a 6'6" guy with a 7-foot wingspan that could outrun everybody. And that made it so much easier for those tight ends. That made it so much easier for Purdy. I just don't think they've had that much of a lead guy. And while Hutchinson is still one of the best ones in the Big 12, I don't think he's quite at that level. And that's, at least in terms of forcing a defense to scheme certain matchups for him. I think...
Go ahead.
I just think with Purdy, he's going to be a gamer. I also kind of feel like he's trying to do too much at times and then going too far in the other direction. He'll press and then he'll be like, okay, I turned the ball over too much. Now I need to play within myself. And then he goes too far in the other direction. And I feel like he's in his own head a little bit.
Thank you, man. Sam, we appreciate it. It ought to be fun. We get some evidence tomorrow. Paul, Greg?
Sam, how much did you enjoy watching a fullback score a touchdown last week, but with a tight end touchdown also mixed in on their first couple scores?
I feel like it's 1990 all over again.
Yeah. Those are the days.
Yeah, fullbacks and tight ends scoring touchdowns.
Back when football was fun to watch. I'm not saying it's not now, but it's just a simple game, huh? Back before there was the internet.
Yeah, back when BYU putting a tailback, fullback, and tight end on the field was considered wide open.
That's right. It was. All right, man. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. S11, Sam Bradshaw with us Fridays at 5:30 for as long as possible, breaking down Baylor, their opponent, looking back at it as well. After the game's over, Craig does an audio podcast. Paul and JD do an immediate post-game show as well.
I think it might be me and Colt this week. I'm hoping for Colt, yes.
What?
We got to move cars, so we need to go to commercial break.
All right. Okay. All right.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and soon to open in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Baylor Scott & White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, hand or wrist injuries, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trusts. Baylor Scott & White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance, and there are no hidden costs. Even offering financing if that's needed, everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
Born in Waco, Brotherwell Brewing exists to serve the Central Texas community with locally crafted beer of the highest quality. They want to bring Central Texas closer to the brewing experience so everyone can enjoy well-made beer as much as they do. For 2.5 years, they've been bringing high-quality beer to Central Texas at their location on Bridge Street in East Waco. Brotherwell Brewing believes in community and bringing people together to enjoy products made in their community. So for your game day, whether it's a tailgate or at home, stop by Brotherwell Brewing for high-quality craft beer made right here in Central Texas, 400 East Bridge Street, and check them out online at brotherwell.com.
For a limited time, refinance your vehicle and have 90 days with zero payments. Only at Genco FCU. Refinancing lowers your rate and you pay less for your car. You can't pass on rates as low as 1.75% for 48 months. Apply online today.
Annual percentage rate subject to change without notice. Subject to credit approval, membership eligibility, and loan policies. Go to GencoFCU.org. NCUA Equal Housing Lender.
My money, my future, my credit union. Genco.
Texas Farm Bureau Insurance has protected fellow Texans with auto, home, health, and life insurance since 1952. With more than 260,000 square miles of land and 27 million people, that's a lot to cover. Whether you're wrangling cattle or wrangling kids, we're proud to protect Texans in all Texan ways of life.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube.
All right, here we go. This last segment, thanks to both Travis Hines and Sam Bradshaw for the analysis of Baylor and Iowa State. Since we left you, Texas is now threatening 63-28 to get out at 70. They'll get there. 63-28. The game's been just littered with a lot of long, big-time plays. Even Tech has hit a couple of bombs. SMU now is up 2 scores on TCU as they're early on in the first quarter. All right.
Well, I mean, first of all, on Texas, at Texas Tech, I'm curious to see how long Tyler Shuck's out. They've had the backup Colombi come in, and he's actually thrown 3 touchdowns and looked okay. But, if Shuck is injured for a while, that's going to be a huge blow for the Red Raiders. But really impressed by what Texas has done today. They're playing with a lot of swagger. And then on the other side, I mean, SMU, it's there for the taking right now. I mean, fourth quarter, still a lot of time left, but that touchdown they just grabbed was huge after the official review. So if they can hold on to this, even with throwing some interception, having a couple of mistakes, that would be a massive win for the Ponies, and so we'll see. But, one good game going on right now in the Big 12 and another one that's just getting uglier and uglier.
End of 3, Wisconsin, Notre Dame, 10-10 tie. That's gone basically as expected in Chicago. Texas also, by the way, Hudson Card's in the game. He will now mop up everything as they are at the end of the third quarter. They just stopped Texas Tech on a 4th down. And they look good. I mean, I know Tech looks horrible, but Texas has done everything. Kick return game, punt return game, defense, pick 6, and of course, offensively up and down the field. Georgia 62, Vanderbilt nothing early in the fourth quarter. Penn State 38-10 lead Villanova, mid-fourth quarter, and then Coastal Carolina halftime over UMass 36-0. A lot of games tonight. The national game was the Wisconsin Notre Dame, and then A&M and Arkansas up in Arlington. We'll see how that goes as well. Paul, your thoughts about today? Not just the thoughts. We've done that a little bit, but what's your score? We all predicted Iowa State would win. We did that on the show yesterday. And it kind of stunned some of our chat room. If you've listened or watched us since late July or whenever you have for the last year and a half or for the last 12 years, we're not just going to throw it out.
I'm going to say 24-21. I think the difference in this game is that when it comes down to which team needs to make the one play, the more veteran team will do it, and that's Iowa State. They have a little bit more experience, especially at key positions. I think that's the difference. But that Baylor has not. Iowa State's gotten to play a big time opponent. They got to play Iowa. They lost. They've gotten to clean that up. Baylor hasn't played a big time opponent yet. I think that's the biggest difference. But I think this game is very close. I think this is actually a rivalry that continues to bud. These two teams don't like each other. The fan bases don't like to not like each other right now. They're enjoying it. So it's a fun little rivalry that's growing. So I think it's going to be a tough game. I think it's going to be one of those games every year that's going to be pretty evenly matched. So yeah, I think Baylor impresses but doesn't quite pull it off.
Okay.
Yeah, I expect a physical game, super physical with these two defenses and just these two teams and their mentalities. I picked Iowa State. I think it was like 28-24, something along those lines, just in that vicinity. I give them the edge because of the experience factor and because they have been a little bit more proven at this point. So that's really what tipped the scales. The eye test, I mean, I think it's pretty even, or you could even lean Baylor in a way. But again, who they've played has to matter somewhat when you're looking at looking good versus maybe not looking as good. So know a little bit more about Iowa State, although we'll know a whole heck of a lot more about Baylor and Iowa State after this game. I got to give the nod to the Cyclones.
Yeah, I do too. But and I think it's at a game like 26-19, 26-21, something like that.
I would be shocked to see Baylor get blown out, but if they do, that would be like really eye-opening. I mean, that's the result that would. I mean, obviously, if it was on the other way around, like if Baylor blew them out, then lordy, like let's get the hype train rolling. But to see them get beat down by Iowa State, I think that would be really deflating. I don't expect it, but. You never know in these games.
Yeah. By the way, Uncultured Barbarian on the chat. Love the show, guys, and I'm looking forward to the Baylor-Iowa State game, even as my Badgers make my life miserable. But they're jumping around right now at Soldier Field. So,
Wisconsin is not – rarely are they going to see them just get nuked by somebody. It's the way they play. It's like Iowa. On occasion, they're going to have a bad day. They're going to lose the turnover battle. Things are going to happen. But Wisconsin and Notre Dame in a game that goes down to the wire, no question about it. So we all feel like Iowa State just maybe experience. They've been tested. Although when they were tested, and as Travis Hines mentioned, and even Sam Bradshaw yesterday mentioned, they threw up on themselves a little bit in that game with Iowa. Now you tighten the screws, and we'll see. It will be interesting because right now the Baylor fan base, they're going to fill up the stadium, and Iowa State will have their fans as well. The anticipation for this game is very similar to how we got about midway through 2019. The anticipation's there. You could feel it all week. Over 3 games they're supposed to win, and I love it that people are getting riled up and getting ready for this game. It would be a balloon being popped if this thing ended up being like 27-10. And so you're excited. You should be. That's what fans do. And I'm hoping, I think it's going to be a hell of a game. We'll have post-game following the game with Baylor and Iowa State as well with Paul Catalina. Paul, who's jumping in with you today?
It was going to be Colt Barber, but we'll see. So might be just phone calls with you guys. I don't know. We'll see.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Hayden will be here.
Ty Quinn, Hogs 30, A&M 27. Keith, Arkansas puts 40+ on A&M. Wow.
Whoop,
Makes a statement in the SEC. Keith Posa with one play. I trust Gary over Purdy, but I realize that's a homer take. Scott LaRock, what in the hell's going on with SMU? They're looking good.
Yeah, they've been able to overcome a few mistakes. They're getting the ball back now, up 42-27 and 10.5 minutes remaining. So it's there for the taking. I mean, this would be a huge win for Sonny Dykes. Be a massive blow for TCU just to take a loss to SMU in general. But to do it when you've gotten off to a pretty good start would be a big blow. But, I mean, I expected a close game between these two teams. It typically is. I am a little bit surprised, though, that TCU's not closer. I'm surprised that it's a 2-score with 10 minutes left, but a lot of time is remaining.
Well, and it is very indicative of the new era of football where you can be up 15 with 10 minutes left and have to really go and score to make sure that you...
Well, they have Zach Evans, so that's the thing is until there's about 2 minutes left and you're down by 15, then there's always that one play factor that could come in.
No, you're right. From Chris Chiranza, I hope I got that right, Chris. I took Baylor, with points today. I think it'll be close, but I also took Arkansas and West Virginia with the points, so we'll see. From Arniak, Baylor with the upset. A&M handles Arkansas, and Ty Quinn. I would absolutely love to see Oklahoma get embarrassed today. Embarrassed? They may not, who knows? A lot of people are on the West Virginia deal today, but they're still 3-touchdown underdogs against the Sooners in Norman.
Hey, if Jarrett Doege has a huge day, or somehow he and Garrett Green, if Garrett Green comes into play, have a big day, then that's entirely possible. Or Spencer Rattler has an awful day and West Virginia's defense eats them alive. But, there's a chance. It's usually a pretty good game between these two. But West Virginia's never beaten Oklahoma since they joined the Big 12.
Really?
So
They joined at a time when Oklahoma was just ramping it all up. Yeah.
But there's your jinx right there, is that West Virginia's never beaten Oklahoma, I believe, in Big 12 play. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I saw that stat earlier this week. So, that should be an interesting one as well.
Now, this is interesting. An update in the Ryder Cup, and I know we got to go. Americans up 9-3. But right now, the European team up in 3 of the 4 afternoon matches, although they're only in the second, third, and fourth hole. The Americans lead 1, and then, of course, singles all day tomorrow. The Europeans win 3 out of 4 today. It's still a pretty nice margin because the United States usually does very well when it comes to singles play. But at the same time, again, a long way to go this afternoon with those matches. Notre Dame has just scored the lead. Wisconsin, after the Badgers had taken the lead on a field goal, and Texas is about to get to 70 in their game against Texas Tech.
So sorry to our Wisconsin fans that were just talking in the chat room that we just mentioned, because Notre Dame runs a kickback to score. But, UT getting awfully close to 70. They'll get that in the next couple minutes.
Look, Wisconsin fans, pop a Pabst Blue Ribbon, have some cheese curds, calm down.
Yeah.
Yes, it's only 17-13.
Yeah, SMU, by the way, forces TCU to punt. There's a lot of time left. 10 minutes left, up by 15. They have the football around near midfield. For Craig Smoak, for Paul Catalina, for Hayden Bumpus, thank you to our great sponsors of Sikkim 365 Radio and also 365 Sports. We're about to head to the stadium less than a mile from here. David Smoak, Sikkim 365 Radio. Have a great afternoon.